needed on the consumer side,
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely.
Okay, we're live. Yay! Charlotte, thanks so much for
Woo!
being here, all the way from New York.
Yes, I'm happy to be here.
Thank
This
you. It's
happy hour.
happy hour times. So let's get started. My name is Emily Clay. I am the co-founder of Illume, and we are a career platform for midlife career professionals. And in January, we are launching a workshop called Getting Unstuck. There's 5 different modules, and if you guys are interested in signing up, we have a newsletter. It's on our events page, and I've put that in the chat. And today we have Charlotte Japp, who is a founder of CIRKEL, and it's a company that connects older and younger professionals, whether it's for personal growth or professional growth. And today we're going to be talking about 3 main areas. But one, what are some best practices for networking? And how do we pivot in a new career later in life? And then what are the benefits of networking? Beyond just meeting new people, like how do we take it to the next level and make it a much more meaningful experience without it being cheesy? And then in terms of Charlotte's background, after she graduated from Georgetown, she started her career in creative marketing, and she worked for a bunch of different media companies, and she saw the consequences of age segregation in the workplace. She felt that older and younger professionals really needed to connect and learn from each other, but they didn't have a way to meet. So then CIRKEL was born, and it makes networking across generations really seamless and much more impactful. She was named as one of Next Avenue's 2020 influencers in aging. That was recent, right?
Yeah, really recent.
And were you surprised?
So I was interviewed over the summer, but that part was really surprising. I was like, I've known about that list for a while, so I was really excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I saw that you called out Chip Conley and Cindy Gallup. Loved
All these
it.
amazing people, yeah.
And she was also a 2020 Gen to Gen Innovation Fellow. She's been featured in publications like the New York Times, and she's spoken internationally about the magic of connecting generations. It's circle.world to learn more, and we will post all the social accounts for you so that you can find them easily. And please feel free to ask questions during the event. There is a Ask a Question button at the bottom, and we'll address those at the end of the discussion. So thanks again for being here, Charlotte. Super excited.
Yeah.
And after reading about you and listening to the podcast that you were on recently, I thought, oh my God, I really admire what you've accomplished. So in
Thank
terms
you.
of questions, it's more of a free flow. So if you have anything else to add, feel free. But the first one is really about what motivated you to start CIRKEL. I mean, were people receptive right away when you talked about an intergenerational platform or not?
So when I first started CIRKEL, it was really about creating intergenerational spaces. And I kind of hate having to say like intergenerational spaces, but for me, it was like I wanted to be in events or rooms or online conversations with people who are older than me. And so when I started it, I was 28 years old. I'm 30 now. And I felt like I grew up in New York. I live here now. And New York is in a way very multi-generational. I feel like it has the sophistication, especially growing up here. My parents had parties where they would let the kids be part of it. We met their friends. I could speak to them as an adult. They really trusted me and were very open with me. And sort of exposed me to things early on, like all this culture and film and all this good stuff. And it was weird that when I went to work, I was suddenly in this youth zone. And it was kind of exhilarating at first because I loved all this creativity. I was working at Vice, which you may be familiar with, and they were a self-described media company. So I kind of reveled in this fun atmosphere. And then I realized like, oh boy, I'm supposed to be building a career here. And there's no one who's going to mentor me or train me or really like show me how to do my job. And it was a lot of on the go training, kind of trial and error and learning. So the first iteration of CIRKEL was really just events. And that was like, for me, the simplest way to create these intergenerational worlds that I wanted to see more of. And I think there was like a lot of interest. Like I talk about how the first event on the Bowery, people wouldn't leave at the end. You know, they were like shutting the lights on us, kind of like, okay, you got to go home. And it was just these conversations that wouldn't stop because people had never had access to that perspective before. And it was just really fun.
And I think if it's purposeful like that, where you're supposed to talk to other people who are not a different age, you know, that's the whole idea. Then that could be, you know, be more encouraging. I feel like I'm always drawn to people who are, you know, more my age. And so
yeah, I think we're like, for whatever reason, I don't know what the biology of it is, but we do tend to be attracted to people in the room who are like us, who look like us, you know, by gender and ethnicity and socioeconomic background, like all of that. And age is no different. So I think when it comes to that approach, even people who say that they like talking to people who are older and younger than them, they still need a little bit of format, a little structure, and a little concerted effort to get them to get deep with someone, because it's also like a double opt-in. You need both sides to like be up for it. Otherwise it can feel like not a great experience, I guess.
Yeah, right. No, I took a class recently, and one of my favorite people, he's 23. And so we would talk for like 2.5 hours on the weekend when we didn't have class.
Nice.
Just about, you know, ideas and business ideas and stuff. He was great. So, so anyway, but we didn't really talk about age. It was just, it was just different. We offered different ideas and different tactics, right? And so that kind of made me go, oh, wow, he does have a lot to offer. You know, just because he's young doesn't mean he doesn't have anything to offer.
And I think that's a really important piece that you mentioned. Like, it's not about talking about the age divide. It's about finding common space where you can get really excited about the same thing. You know, if you're both film lovers or, I don't know, like a background in a certain industry, like that's so exhilarating to talk about it with someone from a different generational perspective. But when you talk about age, it kind of gets negative, and that's it sort of turns people off, and it's not the best way to make those connections, you know.
Right. No, I feel like CIRKEL's been more aspirational. It's more about continuing to learn and grow, and, you know, just dive in and meet somebody who has a similar interest. So the next question is, what would you say are the best practices for networking in a pandemic world?
I think networking does come with that stigma that it's awkward and transactional, and that all existed before the pandemic. So being stuck at home has actually made that even harder, and it actually does take an even more concerted effort. But the thing is, there are outlets like, you know, online events like this. There are a ton of free platforms, and, you know, obviously I believe in CIRKEL. I think that's the best way to do it. But I think what I've learned in terms of best practices is when you're talking to someone, like I take a ton of notes, and I really do try to come to the meeting with a bit of direction, you know, come with doing some research, looking them up, like not in a creepy way, just in a respectful way. So you like know.
Oh, I totally creeped out on you. I did.
I love it. It's a sign of respect, you know, like if you're spending time together, you're literally like locked in a screen. You want to show that you've done a bit of homework, and it makes the conversation more fulfilling because you can go in on the thing that you know you have things to talk about.
Sure.
And, you know, obviously follow up. I think that's a huge miss. A lot of people forget to follow up on the things that you talked about. You know, if you did have a goal out of that first meeting, you know, the second meeting is usually when you can go harder on it. The first one, you want to make the nice connection, become friends, build the trust. And, you know, not to seem like you have to strategize too much, but it does take a little bit of organization. And I think being sloppy doesn't really do much for you, because it's like, what's the point?
So then do you, if you join CIRKEL, then do you kind of outline how to go about it in a constructive, helpful way for people instead of, okay.
So we, I think compared to, let's say LinkedIn is just a platform of of profiles and users. And while you can in-mail people with a cold message, the chances of them responding to you are quite low. So what we do is, you're in a cohort with people who have already elected that they want to have this experience, which is a great plus. But I think the important piece is context. So every member gets onboarded individually by me or someone from my team, and we get to know you as a person. What are you into, your interests, your skills, the industries you've worked in, just get that 360 picture. We actually write bios for everyone who joins. So if nothing else, you have a nice bio at the end of it. But, we kind of make you shine as your best version. And then when we introduce you, we explain the exchange that we think should be made, why we're connecting you, what you both need to learn from each other, so that there's a bit of direction to the meeting. And we also provide a guide for, how to structure the meeting and follow up and things like that. So regardless of if you're like a pro networker or very awkward about it, we got you covered.
Oh, I like that. No, I think that's good. I think having a guide would be really, really helpful, because if you're not used to talking to somebody other than maybe your parents or grandparents, then it's quite different,
Yeah.
So no, I think that's great. And then what are some of the biggest benefits of networking beyond just meeting people?
So when I look at networking, I really see it as a learning opportunity, sort of like what I was referring to earlier. And I think there's so many benefits to it, but obviously if you have a goal, it can help you towards that goal if you're talking to the right person. But if nothing else, it really should be like that two-way exchange. So even beyond intergenerational, beyond CIRKEL or anything, every time you have a meeting with someone and you're trying to get something out of it, you really need to ask them, how can I help you as well? And I think maybe that's something that comes with time and doing it for a while, but those early college age kids that start doing these networking, emails or things like that. It's a lot of like, what can you help me with this? I want to get introduced here. But someone is way more likely to be helpful when you ask them how you can be helpful for them as well. So just making sure it's balanced. And then the other thing that's been a surprise actually is people like the opportunity to practice talking to strangers. And I never thought about that as a skill, but when you think about it, much of life is meeting new people and building those relationships. And if you can't even have like a pleasant, kind of cold meeting and have it go somewhere, or maybe like have that new contact in your contact list, then it's really hard to progress. So it's actually really good practice just to have conversations and get used to taking those notes and following up with people.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I was wondering about just with cell phones and everything, it does change just normal communication. And so I was wondering if that, was a benefit for younger people especially.
You mean that we're on Zoom now or virtual?
No, I just, because, I didn't grow up with a cell phone. But, my 23-year-old friend has, right? And so it would seem to me that it might be more helpful in terms of communicating in person, to kind of practice basically, when they're working.
Yeah, actually, you bring up something interesting, which is that everyone has different communication styles, and sometimes that's a big barrier between age groups. A lot of times in the workplace, you'll see older colleagues want to talk face to face, come to your desk or something, and then you'll see younger people shy away from that and be like, can you just Slack me or text, message me or whatever. And it kind of creates tension because you're like, this is uncomfortable for me. I don't like phone calls, or I don't like face to face. And so I think it's been actually an interesting time during the pandemic where we're all like leveling the playing field a bit with virtual meetings. And it's been a sign of how quickly people all across the age spectrum can jump into a Zoom lifestyle, I should say. Like it is the new normal. And I think to that point about like how we communicate and talk to strangers, and we are all sort of like upskilling in that sense. So hopefully in the future, there's less of that tension about how we communicate and more just like what we're saying, what we're communicating.
Right, right. With all of these connections that you've been able to make through Circle, has there been any that have been really, really surprising where you put it out there and they wanted to meet and you go, oh God, I don't know what's going to happen?
That's a good question. That's like not something I've thought about. Let me think for a second, because there are some so obvious, like one person, two people who are interested in mental health, one therapist, one someone looking to switch into a more meaningful career, and the therapist actually guided the younger woman into applying for social work school, things like that.
I think she got her master's, right?
Yeah, she's going to start, I think, actually next fall because of the pandemic. She didn't want to do virtual learning. But so there have been some, that was kind of surprising because I didn't even know that the younger woman wanted to go into social work. I just knew she was looking for more meaning in her career. And a therapist is someone who really understands what that means. But it ended up being such a click that they just got so close. They're best friends now. And they, now the younger woman is applying for, or got into the social work program at NYU. So unexpected things like that. I think, what was an interesting one? We introduced a woman who runs her own interior design company to a young, a young digital marketer. And, it was just because she wanted some help on how to go more D2C. She had been previously selling her fabrics through showrooms. And, the young guy, I think he's 30 years old, works in CBD, actually, in direct-to-consumer CBD. So very different products, different lifestyles, all of that, but actually made a great connection. They still keep in touch. She got a lot of helpful tips, and she probably has other people to do the digital marketing for her, but to have that purview as the president of the company is really valuable. I think it just goes to show even some of the more random connections that we make, and we do put a lot of thought into them, so none of them feel completely random, but I would say that it's about the context, because if you know enough going in, kind of what I was saying before, the research, you can find really interesting overlaps. Maybe it's a personal connection, and you hit it off, and then you discover there's some other crazy overlap in your professional life. So I think having that awareness of all the ways that you might intersect is really valuable.
Okay. No, I love that. So pivoting later in life is super exciting while also being terrifying. Can you talk about recommendations for people in midlife who want to make a big career change?
Yeah, I think that's kind of my most interesting group of our members. We have a pretty even group between millennial, Gen X, and baby boomer, about 30% of the membership each, which is the same as the workforce breakout, actually, with sprinklings of Gen Z and silent generation. But the midlifers in the 40s, 50s, and 60s are really interesting because they are also looking to meet older people, people who are older than them and younger. And so we do tend to flip flop and make interesting introductions on both sides. But the thing that struck me the most is when I'll meet, we onboard them. So I'll meet these really talented, experienced individuals. Maybe they took a break or something. There's some reason why they're making a very extreme pivot. And their confidence is totally shot. And it's so surprising to me because I can see on their LinkedIn, and I can't make that generalization, everyone's different, but there have been quite a few people I've seen who have been part of major companies at their foundational moments, have a lot of great work to show, but because maybe they want to do something different or they took a break or something, they really have trouble putting that forward and saying, look at all the work that I did. And I love, when I created this thing and I want to talk about it. I don't know, it's really frustrating because it's I value that. And I know that other people at the company, younger or older, would see that as valuable, but there's kind of a understanding of what you bring to the table, and then you're in the door, and then it's great. But I think that's just really surprising to me because confidence is so key, obviously,
And is
But
that mainly men and women? You're finding that in midlife?
I guess I've seen the more extreme versions have been with women, because they've, taken care of kids. For example, like the ones, probably like the longer the gap that they've been out of work, probably like the more confidence boost that they need. But even some of the men who, for example, want to pivot from working as an employee to having their own business, or they want to pivot industries, try something else out. It always helps to sort of like take stock of what you've got, and to see how it cross sections or overlaps with, the jobs that are out there. And there are so many of those like soft skills that are timeless and can only be like, you can only have them through the experience. So those are valuable skills as a leader, and what companies are looking for. So have seen a lot of pivoting. And I think it's going to be just the way that we live. Like even younger people, when you hit 27 to 30, there's a lot of pivoting there as well. So I think our work sort of understanding of work is changing, and we need to be more adaptable as workplaces to meet the needs of these workers.
Do you feel like at CIRKEL, do you take that into consideration and go, oh, you know what, I'm really interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm not interested in, whatever it was I was doing in the past or whatever. Do you go, oh, yeah, okay, well, let's match you with this person, or how deep have you gone in this new area? Or do you kind of take stock and go, oh, okay, I'll match you with somebody different?
I think that's actually what makes our process kind of special, that we think about the compliments, not the likes. So if we see two people together and the resume, so to speak, like reads the same, it's actually not a good match for us, because there's nothing really to be gained. So it's all about looking at the opportunities. Like, what does this person have that this person needs? And what does this person have that this person needs? And finding those interesting compliments. And I think that's kind of like, it sort of speaks to the mistake that, this homogenous lifestyle where we're all like attracted to people who are like us, like that becomes problematic, because you're then being exposed to the same thing and you're not growing and learning and changing. Kind of a tangent, but have you ever read the book, The Defining Decade?
No.
So Meg Jay, she's a psychologist who wrote that book about your 20s. And I read it, at like 25 or something. And it talks a lot about like ways to take advantage of this time period. Don't kind of waste it, because she was fighting against this idea that 30 is the new 20, I think, and that people sort of waffle about in their 20s and then take life seriously later. But anyway, the thing that struck me, she was talking about weak ties, and how weak ties are actually more important than strong ties, because they tend to be your outer circle, the people that are an acquaintance, a friend of a friend, people who are different from you, basically, who are not like your childhood friends who know you as a 10-year-old. And those people statistically tend to change your life more than people in your inner circle or your strong ties, because they expose you to different things, they teach you things. And I think about that all the time. I think it's such a great way to live, just really valuing difference.
Yeah, I love that. I've read that too, that it's not really the inner circle, it's the outer circle.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider too. So, okay, I'm going to reference the podcast that you were on, Kristen Bain, back in March. And you talked about how age really needs to be in the conversation of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why do you feel like that's so important?
Yeah, I think that the reason age should be so considered in DEI is because the workers are changing very quickly. Our demographics are changing, but the workplace isn't really adapting fast enough. So I saw a statistic that 10,000 people turn 65 every day. There's a lot of people who are hitting that age. And because we're living longer, we need to work longer for that paycheck, but also for purpose and, getting up in the morning. So when you see that, like, the workers are getting older, but workplaces are still trapped in these ageist hiring trends, or they're not providing enough resources for all those different, 5 generations of the workplace to connect with each other. There's like a disconnect because that doesn't really reflect what's happening in the world. So, per CIRKEL philosophy, when you have all these different professionals under one roof, so to speak, or one company, you really need to look at the age breakout. And if it reflects, the same percentages of the workforce at large, do you have that same split? And then if you do, let's say you have 5 generations in the workplace, are you actually creating meaningful connections between them so that they can collaborate and that they can learn from each other? So, it's really something that, for whatever reason, age is not being considered. Only 8% of DEI programs actually consider age. So it's changing, but I think that considering we all, by good fortune, get older, it's weird that it is something that took so long to get here.
Right. No, I think there's a lot more discussion around it for sure. And with the demographic shift, it's imperative that something changes.
Yeah.
So then how do you envision, in terms of future of work, being more inclusive? Do you feel like, okay, well, maybe remote jobs that provides more flexibility? How do you envision that? And what have you seen and heard? I'm sure you come in contact with loads of people who go, oh yeah, this is kind of a trend now.
Yeah, I think we're in an interesting time. There's so much in flux. And I wrote some notes here because I thought there are really interesting ways that the world is slowly becoming more inclusive for older people. So hiring practices are changing and we're seeing more reentry programs. Unfortunately, I think we need reentry programs to rev up for hiring practices at large to just be more age inclusive. It's just one step in the right direction, but really hiring needs to be age inclusive. More flexible work. So I think we're moving, eventually it'll be more of a hybrid between remote work and in person. And I think that is a leveling of the playing field in case a company says you can do either. Then people who have perhaps a disability, have maybe health needs, they need to work from a certain location. They don't have to go through that struggle of getting to the commute every day. So things like that. I think benefits are going to get better. Currently, there's like the trend of lunch provided by your office, but what if part-time workers got 401k benefits? Things like that became more sustainable ways for people to work and sustain that longer lifestyle. And I think what's interesting, I don't know if this is like shocking to say, but what's interesting is it's not just older workers that want these benefits, it's also younger workers that want those flexible schedules, things like that.
Right. And they're pushing it.
They're pushing it. And because we still live in this world that is so obsessed with the younger workers, companies will make those changes if the young people want it. So it kind of works for everyone, but it's starting with young people, strangely, and then it'll work better for all workers.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I've read a lot about how millennials in particular are pushing for more flexibility.
Yay,
because
I know
that was one reason why I left. It's like, no, we're not going to be flexible. Oh, okay, well, bye. It's crazy. So then there's so many different stereotypes, of older workers. So how would you recommend overcoming some of those hurdles?
I think so many of those stereotypes about older people stem in the thought that they don't change, that they get stuck in their ways. And I'm sure you and many people listening are familiar with Chip Conley.
Oh, yeah.
He is the modern elder, and he was so he was a mentor and an intern at Airbnb in the early days. And I think his book is so important about, wisdom at work, the making of a modern elder, but his whole thing is about staying curious and lifelong learning. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the root of what's going to change these stereotypes. If we can all be brave to try things, to follow our curiosity. He says, be as curious as you are wise. So hold on to all of that experience and the wisdom, but also ask the questions and don't be embarrassed if you don't know something. Just have the humility to ask. And you'll be surprised. A lot of young people love helping, love sharing. Like, there isn't that war between the generations the way that the media paints it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So hang out with people with different ages, put yourself into new situations. And I think as everyone starts to live that way moving forward, we'll really start to dismantle those stereotypes firsthand, because people won't be able to say that anymore without saying, no, I have a ton of friends who are in that age group and they're nothing like what you're saying. So that lifelong learning is key.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is as well. So, in terms of where to find Charlotte, Nick is going to be, he posted the code. It's called Try50, and it's also on the little yellow or the green button down below. And there's the Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter accounts. And so if you want to follow Charlotte or reach out on LinkedIn or Instagram, then go for it. And to you personally, right? Is it okay for people to reach out to you personally?
Yeah. Email me.
I guess you can't say no right now, right?
No.
So do you have anything else to add in terms of kind of what you see in terms of trends and intergenerational workforce?
Let's see. Well, my parting word was going to be network and network and network and network, but I think I already said that. I just think our workplaces will change if we want them to, and we need to make it very clear what our interests are. And don't be afraid to negotiate. Like, that's how these HR hiring managers learn about what candidates are interested in. And it's just like we negotiate salaries, negotiate your benefits, things that you want. And I think we'll start to see those adaptations happen. And hang out. I just want more people to hang out across the age divide when, virtually now, and when it's safe to do it in person. But there's so much we can learn from each other, and so many stereotypes to dismantle, and so much fun. Like, it's pure joy when you can hear a story about someone else's experience that's parallel to yours. If someone worked in the same industry or had similar upbringing, it's just amazing how different perspectives can really change your view on yourself, your experience, the world. And I think this time period has really shown that, getting a bit of empathy and seeing other people's lives. Yeah,
I was reading about, what's really, really important. I mean, people's habits have completely changed, obviously, and no one's going anywhere, so no one's shopping. But, it's all about connecting with others and then looking around and going, wow, where are my deep friendships, my deep relationships, and how can I, develop more deeper, more meaningful relationships? It's so important, especially now. Okay, so we ran through all those questions and it's only 33 minutes. But I wanted to thank you so much for being with Illume Hire and talking with us. I was so excited to talk to you.
You too.
And wanted to let everybody know that on our events page, we have loads of events. The next one is December 17th with Adam Day. He was with Nike and WeWork, and he's in consulting now, and he's going to be talking about the future of work. And with that, Charlotte, thank you so much. Have a great time at your mom's house, and happy holidays. And
happy holidays.
We'll talk soon. And I'm gonna be joining in January. So
yes,
I'll see you on CIRKEL.
Yeah, you can tell everyone how amazing it is.
Oh, I will. I bet I'll love it. I bet I'll be completely addicted. Well, and so that's a discount for the first month, but then it's also steeply discounted for the year. The annual is only like $260 or something, right?
$264.
Yeah, that's
basically
worth it.
4 months of monthly, so
yeah,
it's a better deal for sure.
Totally. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.